Good morning. Today I'm going to take you along with me for a day in the life of a professional sports bettor and show you what my daily routine looks like. It's just about 9 a.m. now at this very moment when so many others are already sitting in their offices or working at a job they might not truly want or enjoy. Meanwhile, I'm starting my day today with a peaceful, refreshing walk outside and taking the time to really appreciate and enjoy the beautiful, pleasant weather all around me. Can you see it here? The way the sunlight gently filters through the trees and the air feels so fresh and invigorating. Blue sky sunshine. And I genuinely appreciate that I don't have to work a job for someone else right now, a job that I don't even want. Yeah, so I'm going to go for another walk now. The next step is that I check which emails you have sent me, if there are any, and then I'll see if there's anything to bet on today. When I check my emails, I take a moment to carefully read through any messages you might have sent, making sure I understand your questions or comments. After reviewing my inbox, I consider whether there are any interesting opportunities to place bets today. This means I look at the available sports events, think about the odds, and decide if there is something worth betting on. Once I have made up my mind, I get ready to head out again to place my bets. I make sure I have everything I need before leaving. So now, after my walk and after completing these steps, I've arrived here in my office. Today, I'm going to show you a bit about how I prepare myself for the topic of sports betting, including the way I organize my thoughts and get ready for the day ahead. And I'll share with you some of my thought processes and how I go about things here. That means I'll explain why this particular approach I use is so incredibly successful, and also why your approach might not be bringing you the results you truly want. But I'll show you a bit about that now. So in this video, I want to give you a bit of an idea of what I actually do all day. I'm trying to give you a closer look at the betting industry and explain how it works step by step. Ultimately, you need to understand that when it comes to sports betting, there are several important factors involved, and it's not always as simple as it might first appear. There are all kinds of odds providers. Very few people actually know that. Most people think that every bookmaker calculates their own odds, but that's not the case. The various bookmakers buy their odds from different odds providers. Currently, there are 3 companies that do this. These companies sell the odds they calculate for each game to the bookmakers, who then rely on the odds provider to do a good job. And in most cases, the bookmaker themselves actually has no idea how betting odds are created or what the fair odds should be for a given situation, because their core business is actually something completely different. For a bookmaker, the core business is, how do I acquire customers? How do I do marketing? How do I keep the whole business running? That's actually the core business of a bookmaker. That means setting up branches and so on. And so they rely accordingly on the odds providers. And as a result, they usually sell betting odds below value to their end customers. This means they can then define their own margins and rely on the fact that this will work. And now this is where I come into play. With the Sports Betting Academy, I now ask myself the question, are the odds providers even doing their job properly? Are they making mistakes? Are they even calculating everything correctly? And then I spend a lot of time analyzing where the fair odds should be for each situation. And if I find something that gives us an advantage, I make use of it. So let me say this right up front. Odds providers do, in fact, make mistakes every single day. Thousands of errors, and they often calculate odds completely incorrectly. And my company goes out and teaches this. I show you how it's done. How do I find the odds? Why is the odd incorrect? And how can I use that to my own advantage? That's why the Sports Betting Academy is so successful in this area. But what does a bookmaker actually do? A bookmaker has only one form of protection. Oh, the customer has figured out how the game works. Oh, now the customer has won more than they've lost. Oh, the only solution I can think of is that I have to block and limit the customer. The bookmaker doesn't go and say, dear odds provider, you've calculated an incorrect odd here, I'm going to hold you liable. No, the bookmaker just says, we don't want that customer. But that doesn't solve the problem. The problem is ever present. That means the next customers will come along, and in the end, they have an immense amount of work constantly blocking and limiting these individual customers instead of tackling the problem at its root. That's why this model works so well. Because ultimately, the problem lies right at the front here and not back there with the end customer. But the betting industry may not want to acknowledge that, may not want to understand it. And I get it, because with most bookmakers, the connection is missing. Where should the odds actually be? Most bookmakers don't even understand why the customer is actually in profit now. And that's just their business model. If a customer is in profit, then we block or limit you. And just so you can get a bit of an idea of how the whole thing is set up here, let's move on to the next step. Let's see if I can find something for you to think about whether the odds being offered on the market actually make sense. So, welcome to the next part. Here, for example, you can see a tool that I work with every day. If you want to know what it is, please come to my training where I'll show you everything in detail. But what you can clearly see in this picture is that I am dealing with the various different betting situations and scenarios that exist on the market. I'm basically like the inspector, or more specifically, the odds inspector, who says something insightful about it. For example, here at the very top, Cash Point is offering a table tennis match as one of the available betting options. Here, Jessica is playing against Rosika, and the question is, who will win this match? Win for player 1. This bookmaker is offering me odds of 3.03. Now, at this particular moment, I'm carefully considering just how likely it is that the home player will actually win here in this situation, with the help of these programs as well. Looking at what's already available on the market, I can immediately see that the probability of this happening here is 39.7%. Now, of course, I also need to develop an understanding of what a probability means in terms of betting odds and where the fair odds actually lie. And if you take a closer look at this topic, you'll see that the odds of 3.03 are too high. And here we also see what's called an overvaluation. This odds is mispriced by over 20%. And I can see that. I see this from many different bookmakers. Here you're only seeing a small selection of bookmakers that are also available in Germany. These are the ones listed at the top of the whitelist. But of course, if you look worldwide, there are over 300 different bookmakers where I can do exactly this. And of course, here again, I have to learn a lot about what it means to have an overvaluation. I have to learn to understand what it means if I consistently bet on such odds. For example, if I do this 1,000 times, that I do not just play this situation with €1 each time, and that through this approach, if I don't hedge, I will have a 20% return in the long run. That means if I have wagered €1,000, I will then have €1,200 accordingly, because the odds here were calculated incorrectly. And I can now apply this to all kinds of different situations. For example, I can now say, here we have an ice hockey game. How will the second period turn out? For a bet on team 1 to win, for example, we are offering these odds of 1.36. The probability for this is 84.4%. And I can also see the overvaluation here again, for example. And then you see here many different situations that exist on the market. Of course, there are also options where I can say, oh, I don't want to take any risk at all here. How does that work, for example? And this is also solved, for example, by this program or several programs that are available on the market. And now I also want to give an example. So let's take a look. I'll show you something. Here, for example, I see 2 different betting providers. Here, for example, I see Pipico, and down here I see Bet365. Both betting providers are very reputable companies, available in Europe and also in Germany. Both are on the white list, also available in Austria, so available in many countries around the world. And this is about a basketball game. It's being played by the Chinese in the SPL. You need to understand who's playing against whom here. I couldn't care less. Do I know any of these teams? No, I don't. Do I know where they stand in the rankings? Nope, I don't know that either. Do I know how they played recently? Nope, I couldn't care less. The thing that 99% of sports bettors actually focus on, how did they play recently? What's my personal opinion? What's my gut feeling? What's my instinct? None of that matters here. I'm going to show you a different way of thinking now. Take a look at this. For example, here Tipico says that the home team will win in basketball, including overtime. That means if the game is tied, it continues until there's a winner in basketball. So there are only two possibilities. If the home team wins, the bookmaker is offering me odds of 3.3 here. So if the home team wins, it pays out 3.3 times the stake. At the same time, is Bet365 now offering me odds for the away team to win? The odds are 1.50. Now, an interesting factor comes into play. If you start looking into the topic of sure bets, arbitrage betting, which basically means I bet on all possible outcomes, both on win for team one and win for team two, that's how it is. The result is completely irrelevant, whether the home team wins or the away team wins. You always win the correct outcome. The only skill here is to understand and learn how to focus on these two odds. Like here, we need to put them in the spotlight and check them now. Is it even mathematically possible, if I bet on both situations here, that I always walk away as the winner? Well, that's why I've prepared this for you down here. For example, this is a sure bet calculator from the Sports Betting Academy. That means we've developed these tools for you so that you don't need to have studied mathematics or be a genius. You just need to be able to use a simple calculator, enter a few numbers, and you'll get the correct result. For example, let's assume you have 1,000 euros available. Of course, just to address all the critics again, oh, we can't bet that much. Oh, I'm banned and limited. Yes, this is just meant to be a practice example. If you can't play with 1,000 euros, then just play with 10 euros, 20 euros, 50 euros, 100 euros, whatever works for you. But I just want to illustrate this again here in this video with 1,000 euros. Let's say you have 1,000 euros available, and I'm going to divide that up now as well. Then you see down here at Tipico with the odds of 3.30 that now here Changhua is playing against Yulon Luxgen Dinos, or whatever they're called, and that they're going to win now, the home team, or odds of 3.30. 70 out of these 1,000 euros is 312 euros and 50 cents. Don't worry, you can round it off if the next ones say, well, if I play with a cent amount, then I'll fall back again. I always find it so funny that people are always trying to find some kind of mistake somewhere instead of actually starting to make money here for once. But of course, you can also round it off if you want to. I also recommend that you play with whole euro amounts. But here, it's about the principle. It's about the approach. In the end, I'm betting 312 euros and 50 cents here, if we're being exact, at odds of 3.30. Let's take a look at the first bet here. Let's assume that this situation is correct, then the bookmaker would pay me out a total of 1,031 euros and 25 cents if it works out in favor of the first outcome. 3.3 times 312.50 is a payout of 1,031.25. The second bet we have to place is at Bet365 on the away team to win. Here we have to stake $687.50. Now you can see over here in the calculator, if I enter $687.50 times the odds of 1.5, I also get a payout of $1,031.25. And you see, if I now add these two amounts, the 312 euros and 50 cents and the 687 euros and 50 cents, that I have invested a total of 1,000 euros and get 1,031 euros and 25 cents back no matter how the game turns out. And this here is an incredibly lucrative way to consistently generate profits using the tool of sports betting. And of course, we do many different models that are much more complex with combination bets, where we also hedge accordingly and play against with many other possibilities. Things I can't really mention here on YouTube. But these are things that, for example, participants from Austria or outside of Germany learn. The problem is really only Germany and German legislation, which is why I can't explain everything here. But those who come from Austria or outside of Germany, and they will learn techniques here that you have probably never seen in your entire life, but which are also a lot of fun and bring a lot of joy. Because with me, it's either I win or I get my money back. It's as simple as that. But for that, you really have to engage very intensively with these things here. And you should understand, I don't care who is playing against whom here. Whether they win or not doesn't interest me. The only thing that interests me is how I can consistently generate profits with this topic. And here, that this is possible, just like here, that's only possible if there are odds errors that you understand and use to your own advantage. And here, dear bookmakers, the end customer is not here. Public enemy number one, if he can do that and sees it, right? Instead, you should get your own odds under control and not constantly ban and limit your customers just because at this moment, the odds of 1.5 at 365 were calculated incorrectly. That's something the betting world should really think about. And now let me tell you, you probably can't see it that well on this graphic. But for example here, oh wait, I'll switch the image now. There we go. What you're seeing here now, that's already next level. That's what my participants learned throughout the program. For example, we have our own special calculators that allow me to place combination bets risk-free. And for that, you have to go really deep, really mathematically deep for it to work. But for example, I've played at cash point here. I keep playing slips like these, the ones you see here, or also the one I just recently cashed out when I was at the kiosk. The video from yesterday is based on these fundamentals. That means I play combination bets. But I also understand how I can protect my capital here. And unfortunately, I can't show you everything here because I also have viewers from Germany. If you're from Austria and you want to know more about what's whited out here, just get in touch with me. But basically, it's always about having situations where I see here, this is the odds 1.10. It was a bit too high. It was at 1.09 here. And I have the option to protect or sell my capital at a fair odds. That means I have a margin between these odds that works in my favor. That was also the case here, for example. Here we had a very tough first half. O was at 1.5, where 3.05 was offered and 2.82. At that point, that was actually the fair value. And there are indeed opportunities where I can sell at the current fair value accordingly. That's something you have to learn. That's what the Sports Betting Academy is for, which has already existed for 6 years. Actually, this year is already the 7th year, and for 6 years in a row, it has been awarded as a top service provider and top recommendation by our participants who want to learn exactly this, who are looking for exactly these kinds of opportunities to approach the betting industry in a sustainable, independent, and responsible way. And now that you've seen this here, now we're going to go place some bets, and I'll take you along again and show you today which bets I made. And I'll show you exactly why I chose these particular bets. So today I'll just let you watch along for a day. Normally, this information is only available to participants who are in my master program in Austria or Germany, and they receive this information from me accordingly. But today I'm taking you along for once, so you can see what this looks like in practice. All right, let's go. Here we go. So now I've arrived again. This is where I place my bets. What time is it now anyway? Let's check the clock. I've been working on producing the video all day today, and now it's already 11:30 at night. I've also carefully prepared at home everything that I'm planning to bet on today. So yeah, that's where things stand at the moment. I'll show you the betting slips later, what I played, and I'll explain a bit about why I chose those bets. Okay, let's go. All right, my friends, now I've placed a few bets, which of course have already been shared in the WhatsApp group. That means if you're in the SBA with me and you have the master access from me, then there's a very elite group, a very small group that here has the opportunity to get all the betting slips I play. As soon as I place them, they get notified by me immediately. And here I want to show you something which is very interesting if you take a closer look at this topic. Specifically, this is about the game from the World Cup qualification, third round, Group F, first leg, the Seychelles. And here, on average, every bookmaker typically offers odds of approximately 9.5 for a draw, meaning that the likelihood, according to the bookmakers, is that the match will end in a draw. This is the general consensus across most betting platforms. And the current somewhat fair value, which is considered to be a reasonable estimate by many experts, is around 12.5. Between 12.5 and 13.5 is the fair value for this situation. But now there is a possibility here that you can also bet on a draw through a roundabout way. And today I want to show you this workaround, which I am working on again and which my participants are also working on. And it looks like this. I have two betting slips here you can see here. Let's take a look. Here you can see, for example, team wins bet X and over 2.5 goals. The bookmaker is offering me odds of 115 here. If I now bet €8, you can see I get a payout of €920. That means if the result is 2-2, 3-3, 4-4, 5-5, 6-6, and so on, then this bet is correct. So now I'm still missing the counterpart to this bet. That would be here. Bet X and under 2.5 goals. That would be this bet here. And here you can see, for example, that I get odds of 18.5. And now you need to start understanding, you see, if I try to place them side by side, that I now have roughly the same payout. If one outcome happens, I get paid out €920. If the other outcome happens, I get paid out €925. But the point is, if I now take the 925 and divide it by €58, so I've now staked €58 to hit the X outcome, then that results in a so-called touching odds of over 15. That means I was able to get higher odds for the draw this way than if I had just bet on it at the bookmaker at the average odds of 9.5. And so this exact situation has a mathematical advantage, which I can now continue to use and build on. That was the case here as well, for example. Then there was the situation where I also set up other constructions here. Here, for example, I have this Seychelles game again, and now I also have a tennis match where this set bet with the 3-6 for Menzig is also too high. Then there's also this situation. What I'm about to show is already a more advanced strategy. But first, let's take a quick detour. Namely, here I have the supplementary second example for this. So these two, they belong together here, these €24. They belong together. And now there's another advanced technique, which you just have to learn. This is it here. Here I have these two games again at the end, but at the beginning I also have a game included that doesn't have a mathematical advantage. We can see that here with this over under 1.5 goals in the first half, here from Moldova against Estonia. And now there's a technique, a strategy where I can, for example, transfer the mathematical advantage from the second and third bets into the first bet. So that I then have the possibility here to transform a non-value odd into a value odd. And this situation allows me in the end to play a hedge with the option that I can with these three slips, actually these four slips here that I have now, that I can more or less hedge these four slips in total if the first game turns out to be wrong, which I can hedge against with very little money, starting from the second game, that is from the game Burundi versus Seychelles, and with Menzig, I then have what's called a free bet. That means I no longer have to hedge further, but I then have the chance to take home over €2,800 here, completely risk-free. And these slips here, the ones I played individually, I can hedge them the way I do with my model. And so today, once again, I have the chance to generate several thousand euros risk-free with this approach if you understand what I'm doing here. Of course, in a video like this, where I'm only giving you a small glimpse, it's not possible to convey everything. You really have to engage deeply with the topic. And I know that if you're watching this now, you're probably thinking, what is he talking about? Yeah, what does it mean to transfer the advantage from the third round to the first? I don't understand anything. That's understandable. You really have to study it intensively, and that's what I teach. For example, in my Excel sheets or in the coaching sessions, I always go into these specific case studies so that you can understand the logic behind them, so you understand why I no longer have any risk now. How does the whole thing work? How do I approach this? And for that, you simply have to come to my coaching so I can show you. Here I can give you a bit of insight into how I do this every day and why I make very good money with sports betting every day. So now I'm going to have my coffee here. I'm also taking it a bit easy right now. I've already started a little bit. And then we'll drive home and place my bets accordingly. And then let's see what's going on in the SBA, what emails you have sent me. I have a few emails to answer and accordingly also to further develop the company. With that in mind, until next time, we're back in my office, and the next thing I have to do here is update my betting journal. This is an important part of my routine because it helps me keep track of all my activity. That means every single bet I have here is carefully recorded in detail, including information like the date, the event, the odds, and the amount I wagered. By keeping such detailed records, I can look back and see how each bet performed, which helps me understand my overall results and make better decisions in the future. Placing the bet itself is the smallest effort. That's just a few minutes, if that, in terms of time required. What is much more complex is understanding the logic behind it and then keeping professional records. And that's exactly what I'm doing here now. That means here we have, I don't know if you can see it well, but in total, 298 bets have already been placed this month. And I'm now entering all these betting slips here and numbering them consecutively. In a world full of odds and markets, there is one way that always works. Now that we've entered everything here into the system, I, of course, need to make sure to save it so I don't lose this important data and can prepare everything properly and efficiently for the next steps. All right, it's currently 1:21 p.m. according to the clock. These are the bets that have been placed and recorded in this very first step of the process. By saving this information now, I ensure that nothing is lost and that I can continue working smoothly and without interruption. Of course, there will be further actions to take, which you can see here. Unfortunately, that's not possible. You would actually have to be in my training for that. But there's still one important thing I want to share with you today, once again about that one particular game with the rounds that gradually peel off layer by layer. I want to show you again in detail why I chose it. Now I can demonstrate it more easily because I have my Excel spreadsheet and everything here with me again, and I can display it all on my big screen for you to see. So let's get started. Now you'll get a little bit of insight into the background and thought process of a professional sports bettor. What I'm trying to explain to you here now has nothing to do with what happened today before Rundigen. Those shell games, that's irrelevant. What I want to show you here is what a professional player focuses on. Here, for example, you can see that if you go the classic route up here, bookmaker, bet type 1, for Burundi, I would get odds of 1.08 at most. So it's very likely that the home team will win. The draw is being offered here at odds of 10.5 through the classic route. And for bet type 2, I get odds of 15.67. The odds are already a bit above the normal average. The other bookmakers are usually below 10. 9.58, somewhere in that range. But now with these two bets, what I showed you earlier in the video, that for the draw, now we're talking about the draw. Let's take a closer look at this one situation, that the game ends in a draw and that there are over 2.5 goals. So we're talking about results like 2-2, 3-3, 5-5, 6-6, and so on. Here I get odds of 115. We can also see here that I placed a bet at odds of 115. And for tip X and under 2.5 goals, I get odds of 18.5. We can also see here that these odds existed. And now you need to learn how you can use these two odds to create what's called a touching odds. Because one thing is certain, if the match ends in a draw, one of these options will definitely happen. Because now we've covered all possible draw outcomes. If I take the lower one, we have 0-0 and 1-1. The upper one covers all other draws. Now I first need to understand what exactly is touching. You have to learn this. This is just one of many tinkering parts. For example, here we have two different odds. One is odds of 115 and here 18.5. That means if I want to achieve the same payout, I have to bet more money on the 18.5 odds than on the 115 odds. For example, it looks like this if I bet €1 here at odds of 115. This situation occurs, I get paid out €115. If I now place a bet of €6.22 at odds of 18.5, I also get paid out €115. So that means we see that I have to bet 6.22 times the amount here to get the same payout. In total, I am distributing 7.22 shares here. That's what we call it in technical terms. Or if I say I bet €7.22, it will be divided up mathematically in the same way. €1 here, €6.22 there. And no matter how the draw turns out, I always get €115. If I now move on to the next step, if I know these shares like here, I can proceed and determine a so-called touching odds. That means if I now take the highest odds, 115, and divide that by the total shares, so by this 7.22, I suddenly get the odds of 15.49. And this one here is significantly higher than this one here. That means if I now invest money here, for example, €10 in this case, then if I split it up like this, or let's say you invest €7.22, then I would get paid out 15.94 times that amount here, instead of just getting the 10.5 odds here. The fair odds at the time I'm making this video, that's something we also need to clarify. That's the next big step. So where is the fair value for the draw? At the moment, it's at 12 on the market. Now, the odds of 15.94 are higher than 12. If I were to bet on the draw here now, okay, I wouldn't have a mathematical advantage. But by taking this detour here, I suddenly have an advantage of 32.83%. We can also see here, for example, the fair odds are currently 12 on the market, and I'm being offered 15.94. The probability that this will end in a draw is 8.33%. So it's likely that it won't happen. But that's not the point right now. Because now in the next step, I can go ahead, if I understand all the connections, how can I then here accordingly hedge my risk, these €58? And you'll also learn from me how that works, as long as you're not from Germany. In Austria, I have even more options than in Germany. If you're from Germany, there are other techniques where, for example, I need different bookmakers in order to place the corresponding counter bets. But as you can see, I'm thinking about this in a completely different way. I'm not going in and looking at what's the lineup. How did they play recently? What's my personal opinion? Completely irrelevant. You have to understand, sports betting has nothing to do with thinking you know what to do. If you want to do sports betting the way I do it, there's only one thing that matters. Odds, odds, odds. That's the most important thing in sports betting and nothing else. Here's a little insight into why I chose this particular game. And now there's a further strategy and consideration as to how I can extract this mathematical advantage, these 32.83% from this game, and transfer it to another game that, for example, has no value, has a very low odds, where I can then, for instance, place a certain hedge bet, where I speculate, for example, that this one low odd at the bookmaker will lose. And through the hedge, I can then generate this mathematical advantage accordingly. But that's something you have to learn. I can't explain that to you here like this. Also, you have to be a participant outside of Germany. Yes, unfortunately. Because your DAGGL, dear German viewers, does not allow you to engage with such things that actually promote responsible sports betting. Especially because, unfortunately, betting exchanges and other bookmakers are not at the top of the whitelist for you, which is exactly what makes this possible here. But for everyone from Austria or outside of Germany, I can show you a lot more in this context. And especially if you want to approach the topic of sports betting more professionally, you should really consider, am I even living in the right country? That means if you're from Germany and you really want to become professional here, you might want to consider moving your residence, leaving Germany, and moving to another country where things are even more sports betting friendly. Germany is an absolute disaster and a completely wrong development. But that's another topic altogether. All right. All right, my dears. Now for the next step. Now let's take a look here at what other work I have to do with the SBA. This is where I place my own bets. But I have a lot more to do today than just that. Today, I'm going to look together with you at, this is one of my latest videos that I have produced, which is currently in the process of being set up and prepared for translation into a total of 8 different languages. Because you need to know that in the academy, in the future, there will be content available in 8 languages. That means we've had German for many years already, but now English, French, Spanish, Italian, Romanian, Polish, Portuguese, and Russian are being added. And I'm going to take you along a bit so you can see what other work is going on here in the background. And you have to understand, I do sports betting and teaching sports betting. That's my job. I do this as my main profession. So let's go. So I brought my mouse with me now because otherwise it wouldn't be that easy. So development of SBA worldwide. So you're still here during the creation phase. Yes, that means the Sports Betting Academy's mission is to show you how you can engage in sports betting professionally so that you can reach the level that I am already at. And for that, you need an incredible amount of expertise about the betting industry. And since last year, we've already been working on building and implementing all of this in different languages. This is one of the first videos where I basically clarify what are odds actually. But look here, we now have this in Spanish. And this is what it will look like, just like here. Now let's take a look at it.
Bienvenido al siguiente video. En este video trataremos el tema de qué son las cuotas. Una cuota en las apuestas deportivas es la representación de una probabilidad en un número decimal, que es principalmente el caso en Europa, por ejemplo 2,3, números fraccionarios formato EEU, como ejemplo 3 dividido por 2, cuotas americanas como ejemplo más 170, cuotas de Hong Kong como ejemplo 0,34, cuotas de Indonesia como ejemplo menos 1,25.
Thanks to the advancements in modern technology that already exist today, it is now possible for me to teach in any language spoken anywhere in the world. And just from last year, due to an attempt to make our work here more difficult, we have found that even our routine tasks now require more time and effort than before. This change has made our daily work noticeably more challenging. To prevent that, this is the answer to it. That means now we won't just be protecting thousands of people in German-speaking countries from heavy betting losses to show how this industry works. No. Now we're moving to the global level. Now we're going to show millions of people how this works. And yes, this is our thank you for that attempt. And as you can see, in the end, this is part of my work, because what I have to do here in the SBA is to make progress here. This also means that in order to provide the best possible knowledge in this field, I need to develop videos like this, create presentations, and deliver valuable content so that one day you can do it on your own. One of the most essential and fundamental aspects of being able to do sports betting professionally, and that's exactly what I've been doing for 6 years now. And this year is the 7th year that we've been building this up step by step with dedication and persistence. For example, I spent many months, actually a significant amount of time, implementing this. The online access to the Sports Betting Academy, which is an online platform where I personally show and teach many people from beginners to more advanced enthusiasts, how you can do sports betting professionally in a structured and systematic way. And now, after careful consideration and planning, I've separated them into different sections to make the learning process even more effective and accessible for everyone involved. On the one hand, I have an access for Germany, and then I have an access for Austria. And in terms of content, the two are actually hardly different. Content-wise, everything is the same. That means in the end, you have a live coaching program every week. You can ask me questions, and you learn through all the video lessons how professional sports betting works. The only difference is just the legal adjustment. That means here in Germany, we've set up an access that specializes and focuses on widely listed betting providers. And the master access for Austria, which is accessible for all other countries. So if you're from Liechtenstein, from France, from Spain, you can book the master access Austria. I just called it Austria. But anyone except those from Germany, unfortunately, they can't buy it, can book it. There, for example, I can show you completely different things, like how I hedge here, how I proceed, where I also need betting providers that are not on the whitelist. And so unfortunately, I had to separate it legally. But in the end, for example, here we always have live coaching evenings on Wednesdays where I show you everything. And here we always have live coaching evenings on Sundays where I show this. And the master access in English is currently in development as well. And at some point in the future, it will be the case here that there will be a third live coaching evening, which will then be held in English for the entire world. That will probably, we'll have to see, maybe be on Thursday evening or Tuesday evening. We'll see about that in the future. But down here, if we go in, let's go into the Master Access Germany section, so you can get a bit of an idea. Of course, there's also a lot of work going on in the background to build all of this up over the months and years. That means a lot of videos have been produced here, including teacher videos. And here, for example, you can see live coaching is included. There's a dedicated Zoom link for that where I record the session so you can watch it later. Then there's a lot here about the topic of basic knowledge, web variants in detail, bookmakers, important betting rules. And further down, we already have these sports betting strategies that still work in Germany. The topic of match betting is discussed here. The topic of value betting is discussed. The topic of sure bets is discussed here. And there are lots of case studies that are still allowed in Germany. Yes, a lot of instructional videos were created. I also have this service in Austria, but unfortunately, I can't show everything if I want to publish it on YouTube. But in the end, in terms of content, it's structured and organized exactly the same one-to-one. That means you won't miss out here in this context. That means you'll get the same service from me, no matter whether you buy for Germany or Austria. The only difference is the legal adjustments regarding what I can teach. And then here, for example, these are also included. These are all the calculators and tools we've developed over the past few years. Whether it's the one in the draw, whether it's a value calculator, or whether it's the moonshot calculator, that's a completely separate strategy. Whether it's about securing combination bets like the ones Geld Buchmann has, for example, or this betting shield where you enter all your bets, all of that causes a lot of work behind the scenes, work that the public never actually sees, developing and building these things. And what else do we have? In the end, of course, there's also the daily email correspondence. That means we receive a lot of emails every day with many people asking me different questions, and I provide the corresponding answers. But maybe I can also show the WhatsApp group. So this is what a group looks like. There are two of them. There's the SBA-DE Live Tour group, which is for all the participants from Germany. And for example, they always get information from me here. Like today, the betting slips we played earlier, when you were there with me, they get this information from me. Then I say, hey, take a look at this. The odds, the slip, check it out. There's an advantage in it for you. And then, for example, all these participants can replicate those bets if they're in this group. And we also exchange ideas regularly there where I can continue to help you out. Of course, the same thing also exists for Austria. I can show you more things about that later. like how I approach it there, how I hedge the bets and so on. And from the perspective of Germany, you should ideally view all these betting slips as value bets. That means you can either let them run or you'll need to develop ways for yourself to place the counter bets accordingly, even with widely listed bookmakers. So for example, just so you can get an idea, right now I'm in the process of creating a newsletter for my participants, which is specifically about this payout that happened here yesterday evening. I picked it up together with the other participant, and now I'm about to send it out to all the nearly 3,000 participants who are already in the SPay. If you're not in there yet and you also want to receive these emails from me, there's a link below in the video description where you can register for my members area free of charge. Just to clarify, the SPA is a special program area where I share exclusive updates, resources, and information with my community members. But yes, just so you see, this is also part of my work that I consistently and regularly send out emails to my followers, keeping them informed and engaged with the latest news, updates, and valuable content. And as soon as I've sent those out, I'll continue on with my other tasks and responsibilities for the day, making sure everything runs smoothly and everyone stays connected. So, dear folks, now the first game has officially concluded, and it developed precisely in the direction that I needed it to. At this point, I now have a situation where I no longer face any financial risk, and I utilized a particular approach to transfer the mathematical advantage from a combination bet to the first game, which effectively served as a hedge with the bookmaker. And because the bet with the bookmaker didn't work out, meaning I lost the bet with the bookmaker but my hedge paid off, I can now let the other two bets, which I'll show you in a moment, run completely risk-free and don't need to hedge anymore. And today I have the chance to win over 2,290 euros here. And if that doesn't happen, then I've already gotten my money back through this strategy. Let me show you my situation here. So, take a look at this exciting match right here. It's the game between the teams of Moldova and Estonia. Here in the first half, for over 1.5 goals, I was credited with 49 euros and 23 cents through my hedge. A small fee will be deducted from that, but I received 49 euros and 23 cents. And it's about these four slips here. And over here, with these two here, I had this game at the top. That means this Moldova game, and here as well, I had Moldova at the top. And here I said that it would end under 1.5 goals. And this odds 1.26 euros. That one didn't have a mathematical advantage, but the two back here did have a mathematical advantage. And now there is a strategy where I can transfer this mathematical advantage, which exists back here with these two odds, to the first game. So that here, as you saw, I played 24 euros here, and here I had the same again without the first game, also with 24 euros. That means in total, I put 48 euros into play here. And these 48 euros, because the first game was wrong, and with the right approach, with the right understanding, I have already gotten them back here. And so now I can simply let these two bets run until the end and now have the chance to generate over 2,200 euros here risk-free. And the exciting thing about this was that to maneuver myself into this starting situation, I needed a total of 48 euros. And here for this situation where I was able to win 49 euros, I needed about 20 euros more. That means with a total investment of 50 euros here. So we had 50 euros, 48 plus another 50. So roughly 100 euros total investment. Now I have the chance here to win 2,290 euros. And if that does not happen, then I already have my money back here so that I can, for example, reinvest it in the next rounds. And we'll see where the journey takes us today, whether it goes in this direction. And as you can see in this picture, I've already won other situations here as well. For example, that was, let me see, I can't show it. Where is it? I had another ticket here. Just a moment. So, for example, here you can see it's about Santiago Wanderers versus Deportes. I received 18 euros and 46 cents through this method. And that was about this ticket. Yeah, those are all bets lost, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4 wrong ones, where I had invested a total of 18 euros. And through this method, just the way I do it, and you have to learn how it works, I got those 18 euros back exactly in this last game. To clarify, even though I lost those 4 bets, the approach I used allowed me to recover the entire amount I had put in, which was 18 euros during this final round. So even though I lost this ticket here, I was able to refinance it, and now I have the chance again to get into the next situation to invest money here. And yes, that's exactly what it's about here. If you want to do professional sports betting, it's either that I win something, and ideally a lot, or I find a way that if it doesn't happen, I always get my money back. And that's exactly what I've specialized in, and everyone who is with me learns how this works in practice. So, my dear friends, now it's all over here, and as you can see, for example, this particular Burundi match that we have put into play today, in which we had the wonderful opportunity to generate in total over 2,000 euros today. This is just one example among many, and it really shows how effective our approach can be. It didn't go quite the way we would have liked, but that's absolutely no problem whatsoever. For example, we can see here that thanks to my approach, I got refunds for all the bets that didn't win today through the particular method I use. And tomorrow we will simply continue as planned, staying disciplined, and carefully look for new betting opportunities. And that was a little glimpse into my everyday life today. I'm going to call it a day now, and above all, I wish you lots of fun. And by the way, if you'd like to join in and experience how I do things here, then sign up. Sign up for the Master Course Austria, if you're from Austria or outside of Germany, let's put it that way, or for the Master Access Germany if you're from Germany and want to make a change here with widely listed betting providers. And learn everything that I do here. With that in mind, I was really happy that you stayed with me until the end today. And best of luck with your sports betting. See you in the next video. All the best and see you soon. Bye.